Can I float something out to you, Ben? We may have talked about this off mic before in the past, but I refer to this like new thing, especially with like Jrue Holiday, Marcus Smart. There's not a ton of guys that do this. I think I'm going to refer to it as the Marcus Smart corollary. And I think it's this idea that like if you have a point guard that's able to defend up, somebody like Jrue Holiday can go and defend a center or power forward, Marcus Smart, somebody like that, Bruce Brown, like you just said. I think not really Kyle Lowry, but Kyle Lowry maybe sometimes can rotate and do that. But if you have a point guard that's able to do that, their value defensively is actually a lot more valuable than if they were to play another position. Like if Jrue Holiday were to play at the 2 spot next to a traditional point guard, he actually loses some of his defensive value because the value of having your 1 being able to guard up that way is like mathematically, I don't even know how to think about it. We always talk about like 2 + 2 = 5 in terms of like some portability concepts. I think this is kind of a defensive equivalent where like Jrue Holiday could be like a +1 on defense, but at point guard, maybe he's like a +1, maybe a 2 Ben, maybe he's like a +2. But that's how I conceive of these kind of guys. I call it the Marcus Smart corollary.
Yeah, we did this whole thing in another pod.
Did we?
Yeah, okay. It wasn't off mic. Yeah, we did the entire Marcus Smart corollary.
This is great because I think when it comes to these kinds of concepts, you got to recap them a lot. I teach a lot of 14-year-olds, and if you don't repeat something like 7 times in like a 10-minute span, like even then it goes over their heads.
That's a good rule for me as well. Yes, just treat me like I'm 14 when it comes to learning comprehension. It's good because you got halfway through the, hey, look, I've watched 3 movies this year that I've already seen and didn't know that I had already seen them until I got to the end of the movie. So this time I feel accomplished for realizing, yes, we've already done the Marcus Smart corollary. We have to codify it and get it up because it is not only an interesting concept for team building, but it's an interesting concept this year in thinking about how are you going to win Defensive Player of the Year? Because there's another small guy. Can I just start firing some names out here that have been jumping out to me?
That was like an A-list transition, by the way. That was incredible work.
Have you seen Alex Caruso play defense this season?
Oh, I've seen Alex Caruso play defense.
I mean, last night against Phoenix, some incredible possessions against Kevin Durant, incredible possessions late in the game. But I don't watch too many Bulls games, and yet I think I've seen most of the Bulls. It's very weird. Watching Bulls games is a very weird experience. You're like, I'm not really watching this game, and then you realize, wait a second, I've been watching this game for 10 straight minutes, and the Bulls are ahead, but they're blowing it, but they're also winning. Every game, you can't tell if the Bulls won or lost any game you watch. But what is consistent, you know what I'm talking about, Cody. What is consistent is that Alex Caruso is a menace, and when he's out on the court, he's terrorizing opposing teams, and he's like, 6'4", 6'5"? He's a little bit bigger, but he can play point guard. I think the weird thing with him is why is he only playing 24 minutes a game? What is going on there? Why doesn't he play more?
That's the key part about like why he's not a multi-time first-team all-defensive guy. Because I don't know if he's ever. We talked about this on the when we were looking at the best defensive players over the last 15 years. Because I think we had this weird epiphany at the end where it's like, well, wait a second, how can we rank somebody like him? I don't remember who. I think Thibault was also in that conversation where it's like, how do you rank a guy that's never like consistently played more than 25 minutes per game? So yeah, Caruso in like 23 minutes, 24 minutes is like an unbelievable top-tier defensive player. Great question. I don't know why he doesn't play more. I don't know if he's that much of a negative on offense that he's unplayable. Like I think he has some nice secondary passing chops, right? Like I've seen him make some of the like catch. He can take a couple dribbles in, make a nice pass, but I don't know if he's really creating off the dribble. The shooting is definitely a little bit more of a struggle. I still think he should probably play a little bit more because, you know, I really value high-level guard defense. I value any kind of high-level defense, but I don't know how to conceive of somebody like that in terms of Defensive Player of the Year when you're only playing mid-20 minutes per game.
Caruso is like the quintessential dimes in defense guy right now, right? Like if you look at his shooting indicators on open shots, he's below average basically across the board on outside shots. Not terrible, but, you know, bottom sort of quartile or third of the league for guys that shoot jumpers from outside. So that's not his thing. He's not really 3-and-D, but hustle plays, extra passes, like pick up a loose ball, make a beautiful dime, make a steal, turn you over, get out in transition, make a beautiful pass. This is the sort of Caruso model. And Cody, what's your moratorium on stats? Is it 10 games? What is it? When does it lift? When are we allowed to talk about things that have happened in basketball?
Well, I think that's one way to put. Look, listen, the moratorium's for me. Like you can do whatever you want. I think I'm looking at Okay, first of all, people, you need to weigh in on this. We had a discussion beforehand, and I referenced somebody's record, and then Ben's like, "Oh, that's a stat." And I'm like, "The record isn't the stat. That's something else." And I was trying to talk about more granular stats. So I personally don't think a record counts as like a stat in terms of the moratorium.
So you want the poll is a record, is the team record a stat? That's what you're looking for?
Yeah. Can I look at team stats if I have a moratorium on looking at stats? Like, is that acceptable?
Okay.
That's
all right.
what I want.
We'll get to the bottom of that. We'll ask the people, and they'll get back to us. Anyway, continue with your original point.
Well, what I was going to say is, like, I'm looking at the standings right now. The Nuggets have played like 9 games. I think I can start looking at stats. Like right now, if I start pulling some stuff up, I would feel okay with myself if we did it. So I'm okay with stats at the moment.
Okay. The reason I asked is because Alex Caruso has played 9 games so far for the Bulls. Okay. A lot of his advanced metrics already look fantastic. They look fantastic because of his defense. Just as a very crude indicator in a very, very small sample, we continue to see this pattern where he's a big defensive impact guy. And the Bulls' defensive rating with him on the bench when he's off the court is like 118 right now. It's around 118. When he's on the court, it's 111. So you're getting this signal again, even though he's a guard, where it's like, not only does he have obvious impact from the plays he makes and the elite players that he guards, you're going to guard a 1 sometimes, you're going to guard a 2. Against Phoenix, you're going to guard Kevin Durant, whether he's playing 3 or 4. He's 6'10". It doesn't matter. Caruso can bother him. So you have that. I just wonder if there's enough minutes played and enough narrative behind a team that may end up with a mediocre defense like Chicago overall for him to get into like the end of the year when we get serious. You know, are you going to be able to get that Marcus Smart narrative boost and win Defensive Player of the Year? We have to jump to big men. What do you think?
I think it's really tough because I see I'm looking at his past right now. In terms of awards he won, he was actually all defensive first team last year. I was wrong about that. I thought he was second team, but he was first team all defense last year. And last year he played what? He played 28 minutes a game? 23. He played 23 and a half minutes a game, and he was first team all defense.
That's how good he is on defense.
That is wild to me. Like, do you really think that somebody that's playing that level of defense is bringing that much more value defensively than somebody that's like a couple notches down but is playing like 35, 36 minutes a game?
Oh, okay. I think mathematically the answer is no. I don't think you can bridge that gap. But if you're talking about like the spirit of all defense, like per minute with some sort of reasonable cutoff, meaning you're not looking at a guy that plays 9 minutes a game. Like you can watch Caruso play games or stretches where he plays 26, 30, 34 minutes a night and it looks the same. And so maybe voters do a little bit of an accounting or an adjustment where they say like, I'm not going to hold him too much against the fact. I'm not going to hold it against him too much that he doesn't get in because Levine and DeRozan take up like 2 of the 3 slots for most of the game that he could play. Something like that, I imagine.
Well, let me ask you something then, because Gary Payton II is a player that actually hasn't played a ton of games, period, just because of injuries and whatnot in the past. But I think you and I would both agree that like minute per minute basis, he's right near the top of the league in terms of how valuable you are defensively as a guard. But the most minutes he's ever played in a season per game is right now, where it's 19.9. So he's functionally playing 20 minutes per game. Could you, if Gary Payton II played 20 minutes per game, could you give him an all-defense spot?
I don't know if I would. I don't know. Yeah, but I think that's the point. I think the lower you get, the more you push that concept for voters. But we've seen this before. We've seen like defensive specialists who play fewer minutes get love from coaches and voters when it comes to something at the end of the year like all defense.
Thanks for listening. You can find the full episode of this Thinking Basketball podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you enjoy podcasts.